Hi, I'm Atiqah, the art director for the Dalang Tale. I'm going to talk about the animation process and how we make the visuals come to life. This might sound cliche, but the first thing that I did was brainstorming. The initial idea that we had was to make a film about wayang kulit. We came out with words that associated with wayang kulit, like shadow, light, and dalang. I personally was drawn to the concept of light and shadow. What does light represent? What does shadow represent? Then, an image of a man with fire on his head appeared in my mind. Director Iwan Junaidi mentioned a quote by Ursula Le Guin, which says, "To light a candle is to cast a shadow." We all know that there has to be a light in order to have a shadow. And that's also the art principle of wayang kulit, using shadow of the puppet to tell a story. But the challenge for me was to figure out how to show emotion, like anger in wayang kulit, especially in animation. First, I sketch out a person with a candle body and a fire head. Then, I colored the fire black to symbolize that there's something dark and ugly inside of him. But at this point, there was no fixed story yet. After the director and the writer have locked the story, I finally had a clearer idea on how to start working on the design. But the story has two worlds that I need to explore. One of them is the shadow world. For the shadow world, we want it to look like wayang kulit, but the difficult part is real wayang kulit has very limited movements and expressions. Another challenge for us is to turn something that is originally projected onto a flat surface into an animated film that is full of dynamic gestures and emotions. So I went to the National Library to do some research on wayang kulit. I learned that many countries have their own version of shadow puppets. I focused on the Malaysian wayang kulit, which has very distinct face shape on its puppet and more accurately proportionate forms. I made some sketches during my trip based on the information that I've got. And finally, I managed to design the characters for the film. After intensive research and explorations, I came out with a final look for the characters and felt pretty satisfied with it. This is the time that I thought of adding holes to make it more conceptual. The thought behind this is that I don't think people were born to be abusers. I believe there must be something that happened to them that shaped them into monsters. So I used holes to represent hurt and emptiness. The father had holes in the beginning of the story that indicates he might have been abused as a child. In order to fill his own holes, he abuses the mother by taking some parts of hers. But as you can see, the shape doesn't match, so he will never be satisfied. After we have confirmed the look of the shadow world, I proceeded to do the design for the real world. Just like our previous short film Batik Girl, real world is very different from shadow world. Shadow world is in the past, whereas real world is in the present. But we still have to have that familiarity because the characters are actually related. After we've developed the look of the real world, we move on to the environment and background design. Initially, we've decided to do the animation in 3D, so the design of the buildings can look more solid and colorful. But when we changed the direction to 2D, I thought solid, colorful backgrounds would be harder to draw in every shot, so I made some changes to the backgrounds. In the end, the background had sketchy lines and just one color. So everyone on the team likes the new look, and then we proceeded. While I was working on the design, storyboard artist Han was working on the animatic as well. When the animatic was done, it was quite lengthy. We had to cut it to 5 minutes initially. but later I felt that we needed to add a few more shots, which made the abuse scenes more dramatic. For me, this was the most challenging part, visualizing domestic violence. I wanted to show the impact, but I was scared that it might trigger someone. I think the idea of holes helped a lot, because instead of showing actual physical abuse, I can use the holes to symbolize the intensity of the violence. Still, it is quite scary when I watch it again. I really want to apologize if it triggers anyone. For the animation, we thought that it would be quicker to have our animator, Julia, to do the rough animation first, and then I did the cleanup and refined the look according to the design, making sure that they look consistent throughout the film. Actually, it was a crazy idea to do animation in-house because there were only 2 of us and the deadline was getting closer. Normally, animation is done in 2s, which is 12 frames per second, but we've decided to animate it in 4s, which makes the whole animation 6 frames per second. We assigned a few of our artists for the next process, which is coloring. Coloring the animation is a very tedious process, as the artist needs to color the animation frame by frame. The Dalang Tale is 6 minutes long, and there are over 1,800 frames that needed coloring, which is impossible to do alone. It took us about 4 months to color the whole short film. During that time, we did the animation as well as the background simultaneously.
Hello, I'm Lun, the background artist and compositor for the Dalang Tale. I was in charge of creating the background art in the film, guided by art director Atiqah. But sometimes, even with guidance, it is still hard for me to completely follow the original concept. Moreover, the Dalang Tale consists of 2 very unique environments, the shadow world and the real world. Each world has their own unique look and art style, which is quite challenging to reproduce. So I was given the green light to experiment on the look for both worlds. And I also had creative freedom to adjust based on what is best for compositing. While we worked on the animation, we found that the real world character and background art don't really fit together as we would imagine. Based on Atiqah's comment and help from our artist Ida, we made some final adjustment to the background, especially by making the color look more soft and painterly. With the new changes, the final result looks better. Compositing for animation is not just merely combining the animated character and background. For the Dalang Tale, we were aiming for a specific painterly look, and to achieve this look, I added noise and texture layers on top of the animation. Both layers are animated in lower frame rate to match the character animation, which was 6 frames per second. One of the challenges we face during compositing is the dynamic camera shots in Shadow World. The animation would be easier if it was done in a 3D program, but since the Dalang Tale is a 2D animation, the scenes had to be manipulated in a 3D space. This is to match the camera movement. To achieve that, a pseudo 3D interior scene is built for the Shadow World. We first paint the texture, which was later imported into After Effects and arranged in the 3D space. This method allows us to freely move our camera in the shadow world. That means we don't have to paint any new background image. The real world scene is pretty much a straightforward task. We just have to composite the character animation and the background together. There is one area that I love to experiment with, which is applying blur filter to the background. This is especially for the medium to close-up shots, as it would direct the viewer's attention to the character. In some cases, without applying blur filter, the character might even blend into the background. These are some of the things I contributed to the film. Hopefully the things I've shared will provide some insights and might be useful for aspiring animators out there. Please enjoy the Dalang Tales as much as we enjoy working on it.